Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Korean study video. In today's video, I'll be sharing some simple and practical tips to learning Hangul that you can apply right away. I won't be going into detail about what Hangul is and the history of Korean alphabet, as there are many videos about it online already. Instead, I'll be sharing step by step how I passively learned Hangul by myself and increased my reading speed over time. So the first thing I did was to get my hands on a Hangul chart, and I'm sure many other Korean learners do this too. There are many Hangul charts that you can find online, so find one that works best for you. For me, that is the one that separates consonants and vowels so that I can learn them separately from the start. Once you've found a Hangul chart that you like, or rather makes sense to you, then you can print it out, or if not, copy it onto a digital notebook so that you can practice writing it out. As a beginner, I would recommend finding a chart with romanizations to the sounds at the bottom of each consonant or vowel. With that being said, as a beginner, it's not good to use romanization to learn the pronunciation of each vowel or consonant. However, it does help ring a bell or draw similarities between the new alphabets that you're learning and your native language, which is probably English in this case. Given that Korean is largely character-based, I would recommend using a manuscript paper when you're learning the Hangul and copying it out. However, this is not necessary. You can use any kind of paper or even plain paper if you like. As you familiarize yourself with how each character is written, it also helps to find a website or a YouTube video that teaches you how to pronounce each character, although I would consider this optional at this stage. When I first learned Hangul back in 2009, I was playing around with an app called Hangul. Unfortunately, I don't think this app is available anymore, or at least I can't find it in the App Store anymore, or at least not in mine. So please do let me know if you can find it in your App Store. Essentially, what this app is a Korean keyboard that allows you to type out Hangul characters, and it shows you the romanization on the side, so you can vocalize it yourself. And for me, how I did this was to play around with the different vowels and consonants and see how each character is being built. At the moment, I can't find another Hangul app that does the same. However, one way you can go about doing this is to use the regular Korean keyboard and then refer to a Hangul chart at the side. So as you can see on screen, what I'm doing is to play around with the different consonants and vowels and typing it out to see how they are stacked one on top of another. So in the case of 3 characters in a word, then you would have it 2 on top and 1 at the bottom. It's a bit hard for me to explain verbally like that, but as you can see, there are characters with 4 alphabets in it, and it will be stacked like a quadrant. So that depends from word to word as well. And right now, this is just an exploratory stage after you've learned the alphabet, so I wouldn't stress too much about knowing everything. Instead, you can consider this your first attempt at typing Korean on a Korean keyboard. And yeah, just have fun exploring how each character is being built. This sums up the first stage of learning Hangul, and moving on, let's talk about building simple vocabulary. So now that you've been exposed to the Korean alphabet and how it's typed out, let's move on to spelling some basic vocabulary. The way I like to do this is to spell it backwards. So what I do is to search for some simple vocabulary, and then I'll copy out the Korean word for it and spell it backwards using the Hangul chart that we just used. So what I did here was to use the Naver dictionary and search up the Korean word for apple. In this case, it's 사과. So I'm just copying it out on my iPad. And what I'll do next, assuming I cannot recognize any of the characters here, is to refer to the Hangul chart and spell out each alphabet one by one. By doing it this way, you'll reinforce all the alphabets that you've learned earlier on. And personally, I find this way more helpful than just copying out the chart many times. mainly because you learn how to apply the alphabets and form sounds with it from an early stage. Also, I would like to recommend using an online dictionary or a mobile app for this. In particular, the Naver Dictionary works well, mainly because you can play the pronunciation for the words as you learn them. As you can see, under the English translation of the word apple, you can see a romanized version of the Korean words. And this is not necessary, but it just makes your learning process a lot easier given that you don't have to keep referring back to the Hangul chart. Aside from singular Korean vocabulary that you can copy from dictionaries, I personally also copied a lot of random Korean sentences and paragraphs from many different sources, such as lyrics, news sites, articles, or even subtitles on random Korean videos. So writing really helps you in the long run, and your handwriting will also get better. It's a slow but sure way to improve your reading speed. There's no set rule to this, and all you really want to achieve out of it is just to familiarize yourself with the writing, to improve your writing speed, and to have better handwriting, which comes over time and practice. It's a plus point if you're copying out the lyrics to a song that you've been listening to recently, because chances are you'll remember how the words are pronounced, and as you copy it, you're reinforcing the way the alphabets are being pronounced when they're put together. You'll probably also pick up some discrepancies in the alphabets and how they're pronounced, depending on where in the character they are placed. For example, the S consonant, when placed at the end of a word, is pronounced with a T sound. And also, double consonants are pronounced slightly differently from single consonants. So those are things that you should pay attention to. So yeah, personally, I made copying out Korean words and sentences a habit. So even if I'm not actively studying, I made it a point to find Korean words and phrases that I could copy out as frequently as I could, so that I don't forget how words are being written. And that also helped me improve my handwriting a lot. As you can see, even after so much practice, my handwriting is still bad, but it's getting better. And that's really all you need. So I started off with basic vocabulary, and then I moved on to more complex vocabulary, and then sentences, and then longer sentences, and finally I started copying full articles. And one great thing is that when you're doing this, you're not just learning Hangul or reinforcing the sounds that you've learned, but you will also be building your vocabulary, and best of all, you're learning them in the context that it's being used. At any point while doing this, if a word catches your attention, feel free to dissect them using the Hangul chart as we did earlier, and breaking it down into the different consonants and vowels. And yeah, you can even search up on the dictionary to find out what it means.
여러분, 안녕하세요. 주인공은 언제나 낙차드님이지.
The next step would be to move on to reading and listening. At this stage, you're probably still new to Korean. I would recommend watching children's programs on YouTube with the Korean subtitles on. Personally, I find this a very underrated resource because children's programs are usually very easy to understand, and also they usually have words on screen and it's not difficult to follow. So what I would do here is to watch the program and pause it after each sentence to copy it out. You can repeat if you need. And the whole idea here is to get familiar with the alphabets again and how it sounds when it's put together.
눈썹이 휘날리게 뛰어왔어. 뛰어오느라 힘들었을 텐데 물 한 잔 마셔요. 아, 고마워.
As you continue to improve, you can start moving on to more intermediate and advanced material in Korean. The jump may be steep, but the struggle will eventually pay off. Personally, I had a really ambitious goal of going from basic to intermediate proficiency in less than a year, so I jumped straight into advanced reading material pretty early on. This is the first article, or rather book review, that I annotated. And it was quite a struggle. It took me nearly 2 hours to annotate this much, the first 2 paragraphs. But now I can definitely read a lot more quicker. My pronunciation is still not great, but I'll read a little bit for you so that you can have a rough idea.
나는 혼자 있는 것을 싫어할 뿐 아니라 무서워하는 수준인 것 같은 일인이다. 가끔 혼자 즐기는 모습을 동경해서 시도는 해보지만 막상 해보면 또 겁먹고 포기하기를 여러 번. 어떻게 하면 혼자 초조하지도 민망하지도 않게 좋은 시간을 보낼 수 있을까 싶은 관련 책들도 나름 찾아보는데 그냥 혼자도 괜찮아. 남 신경 쓰지 말고 너 좋을 대로 하렴 하는 책이 대다수. 그러나 눈이 띈 혼자 있는 시간의 힘. 서평을 하게 되어 더 꼼꼼하게 읽었다. 사실 서평을 어떻게 쓰는지 잘 모르긴 하지만 내 나름의 생각과 내용들을 적어보기로.
So yeah, this pretty much sums up how I learned Hangul and started to read and write Korean on my own. I'm sure this can be applied to many other languages. Well, at least that's what I've been doing when I dabble in other languages with different scripts. Let me know what you think, and if you do try it out, please leave me a comment so I know whether this method works for you or not. That's all for this video, and I'll be posting a couple more videos on Korean studies, such as free beginner resources for Korean and topic test preparation material, so do stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!